All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Lagadder, was this your doing? Did you fucking do this, bro? How you doing, brother? Because I seem to think as soon as you fucking wrote your first message, the internet started breaking. But no, I don't know what the fuck just happened there, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully the damn bird. No, I don't know what it is. I don't know why this keeps happening. Gonna be honest with you. My nickname from? So sorry, bro. It's sad, but you know, could you maybe not break my fucking internet? It's not Twitch, it's me. This time I can't blame it on Twitch. I wish I could. It would be nice if I could blame this on Twitch, but this is me. And it just happens. I don't know why, because the reason I was away from my desk is I went into the living room to speak to my brothers and ask them if they're busy on the internet, because they're both working from home as well, and they're data analysts, so a lot of the time they do work with, you know, massive data packages and things that have to be sent. And I was asking, look, are you guys on the internet? Are you busy sending stuff, updating stuff? What the fuck are you guys doing? And they're like, nothing. They were both just chilling there on their phones. So I had a suspicion that maybe that was what was causing this. Like, when all of us are busy, you know, using the internet, that fucks it out. But no, it just doesn't seem to want to fucking work. Anyways, back to what I was saying before we got so rudely interrupted. This is where a creative director becomes so incredibly important. Ordering that story and making sure that the story makes sense. And I do think that hopefully now, with World of Warcraft having that creative director, maybe being able to set up better forums of communication between the writing staff and the historians, because look, Blizzard have all of the building blocks to keep track of every single one of their stories. Blizzard have historians working for them, and I don't mean real life historians, I mean Blizzard historians, people whose only job it is to make sure that whenever they come up with a story, it doesn't conflict with any of their previous storylines. So, but in order for that to happen, you need someone to put the sort of play the role of quarterback almost. So someone needs to be the quarterback that sort of goes, all right, you're going to run your channels like this. In other words, you write your stories, those stories have to go straight to the historians because they need to make sure that that is happening, right? That everything is working. The problem is if you don't have that guy or girl that does that, oftentimes the writers might come up with stories and they're like, oh my God, this is so cool, we have to do this. I never even check with the historians because the historians won't know everything off by heart. Sometimes the historians will have to go look, right? They'll have to actually go search and go through their records and be like, okay, what the fuck did we do? How do we do this? Whatever the case might be. So I think it's important.
I hate the idea that they are telling us this right now. Should tell us this across multiple expansions, or at least multiple patches, instead of telling so much of these just during two Shadowlands patches in the DM.
What the fuck? Why is it creating an echo? I don't understand. Zixix, thanks for 100, bro. Really appreciate that.
You look like you've lost some weight.
Let's see if it does an echo here as well.
I am fine with the lore of Zerathords and the new lore of Titans, but I hate the idea that they are telling us this right now. Should tell us this across multiple expansions, or at least multiple patches, instead of telling so much of these just during two Shadowlands patches in the DL pre-launch.
If you think about it, this could just be the beginning. Could just be the beginning. They're giving us this much. Imagine what they're going to give us for the whole of Dragonflight. Now, I'm with you. If this is all we're getting of the incredible lore and the rest of Dragonflight is pretty bland, then sure. But if this is what we're getting so far and we're not even in Dragonflight yet, can you imagine what Dragonflight is going to bring? Like, I really hope that this is sort of a a look at what is to come. In other words, we're going to get so many more lore books and in-game lore books about the information about how the origins of our universe came to be. What is in our universe? Who is in our universe? I'm really looking forward to this. Really looking forward to it. I have not watched it. You guys don't... Okay, so you guys need to know something. Whenever new trailers and things come out, I never watch those unless it's on stream. So just, yeah, we will watch it today on stream. I always leave that shit for content. Because it's fucking content. It's free content, man. I can watch a 1-minute video and turn it into a 10-minute video. So, you know, why wouldn't I? At this point, I can only imagine another train wreck. I'm just in for the sunk cost fallacy. Or the sunk cost. Yeah, I get that. I don't think it's going to be a train wreck, though, Blackadder. If I'm honest with you, I don't think this is going to be a train wreck. It seems like Blizzard is doing a lot of work on Dragonflight, and it seems like they're trying. So far, everything I've seen from Dragonflight makes me excited to play it. I haven't really seen anything in Dragonflight that makes me go. It's not like, so if I compare Dragonflight to every previous expansion, or at least the last 2 expansions, Battle for Azeroth and Shadowlands, both of those expansions had things that I immediately went, oh, there's things here that I don't like. So in Battle for Azeroth, it was Azerite armor. Really didn't like Azerite armor. And then when Island Expedition turned out to basically just be what it was, I also said this is not it. This is not what we were promised. Nowhere close. The promises of the Island Expeditions were brilliant. What we got was completely useless. So yeah, those were things that I sort of highlighted immediately and said this is a problem. In Shadowlands, it was when they changed Torghast from being an actual good fucking thing to an absolute worthless thing. And also Covenants and the legendary systems and all that. I remember looking at those things and going, yeah, this is going to be another train wreck. This is not going to work. People are going to fucking hate this. And I was right on both counts. People fucking hated it. Dragonflight is the first expansion in a really long time that I'm looking at it and I'm going, I don't see anything in this that people are going to hate. The only thing I can highlight that I think people will maybe dislike a little is I think a lot of people are going to be very lost in this expansion. I think there's going to be a lot of people that sort of jump into the expansion and then, you know, play the way that they've always played, which is just, oh, do everything, I must do everything, oh my god. And then reach a point of going, well, what am I supposed to do now? Blizzard have always told me what to do now, you know, whenever I did something, Blizzard would tell me, now go, you know, do your Torghast run, and now go do your dailies, and now go do this, and now go do that. I'm not used to making these decisions on my own. And I think there's going to be a lot of people that realize, well, actually, going out and exploring is part of what makes a game good. So go out and fucking explore, you know? So yeah, I'm very excited for what Dragonflight is going to bring. So far, at least. I could be wrong. I'm first going to have to play it in order to give you my true thoughts. But for now, I am excited. I still haven't coped that Arthas faded out as lukewarm anime fart. Yeah, I mean, they treated Arthas pretty piss poorly. But again, I wonder if a lot of the treatments of Arthas and so on and so forth, I wonder how much of that was just because of time. I think Blizzard did have storylines lined up for Arthas, and I think Blizzard did have storylines lined up for a lot of characters in Shadowlands. The issue is they ran out of time to realize those storylines. And that's the issue with designing expansions as convoluted as Shadowlands. As content creators, we love to focus on the horrible bits of Shadowlands and BFA because they were really unfun and they really made it horrible for players to actually play the game, especially for people who really just wanted to play the game, right? Yeah, like Bane. That's what exactly, Nowhere Man. The thing that I think oftentimes gets completely overlooked, but is actually far worse when it comes to expansions like BFA and Shadowlands, is the tremendous amount of time that it takes to design convoluted systems such as what BFA and Shadowlands had. Those systems aren't easy to design. Those systems take months, if not years, to design and to keep up with, because those systems have to be updated. You have to continuously come up with new traits to add on to the gear and new legendary effects to give to players. These systems sort of make it impossible for you to just make a good game, because those systems end up taking all of your time. Again, this is where I love what Dragonflight is doing, because Dragonflight is going back to the, shall we say, tried and tested method of make a game, make a world, make the world interesting, and then let people explore the world. Don't make systems, don't convolute the game, just let people play a very straightforward game. Let the raiders raid, let the dungeoneers dungeon, let the PvPers PvP, and let the casuals casual. And that's where those rushes come in. That's where we see storylines like what Nowhere Man said, with Bane's storyline and Sylvanas' storyline. Remember, there was still a whole loyalist storyline that just completely got forgotten. Just nothing happened with the loyalist storyline except for like a few choice words right at the end to the loyalists, which of course wasn't what the loyalists were expecting at all. You have the Anduin storyline that came to a very abrupt end. You have the Tyrande and Sylvanas build-up that came to a very abrupt end. You have the Zuvul story that came to a very abrupt end. And you have the Arthas storyline that basically never even started. It never even kicked off. It was ended with us not even seeing Arthas. We just saw a globe of blue. We saw a bit of anima, and then he was gone. And I wonder if things like that isn't the result of convoluted systems such as what Shadowlands had. They had to spend so much time just getting those systems updated and sort of interesting that they didn't have time to actually just let the game be, to actually let those storylines play out. They didn't have the time to add the storylines in which we would explore Arthas' story, or Arthas' journey, or where we would explore Bane's story and Bane's journey. Because how could they? It was all hands on deck trying to make the systems work. So maybe in Dragonflight, this is an opportunity for Blizzard to do something differently, you know? To do something better, most likely. It's production pipeline issue. They have too much done when they make the decision to cut, and then they can't rework it in time, and the whole thing feels rushed and disjointed. Oh, well, that's also true. That's also true. That's another way in which these things really impact, because you really want to make the expansion work, but at the same time, you have so many systems that you have to update that you have to end up cutting things that you won't be able to get to. Because you realize, okay, I know that you guys wanted to do this massive Odin storyline. We don't have time for this. Every single one of us are working on making, conduits work. We can't do jack shit here. So, good luck. Arkfade, how you doing, bro? Thanks for the first chat. Really appreciate that. Yeah, but just leave the story thread open instead of concluding it in the most unsatisfactory way possible. You see, the problem is, even if they just left it open, that would piss a lot of people off too. Plus, I have this feeling that they really just wanted to be done with Shadowlands. That's the feeling I get when I look at how Shadowlands came to an end. It's like they really just wanted to go, okay, we're done. Fuck it. It's over. We'll try better, or we'll do better next time, but for now, this is it. let's just finish all these storylines. We never want to revisit these storylines ever again, so screw it. That's the feeling that I get, at least. MMO Aiden, that's also possible. That they just wanted to get rid of all the legacy characters. Massive possibility right there. Hypothetical for you. You were given $100 million in the animation team behind Arcane and are told to make a WoW series. Where would you start? What would you adapt? So... I would start... Well, that's a difficult question, actually. So it's one of two. Actually, there's three possibilities of where I would start that I think would make a very interesting anime. The first is start before the movie. So I always thought that the WoW movie failed because it started at the wrong point. It started in the middle of the conflict rather than at the beginning of the conflict. Or at the end of the conflict would have been fine too. The issue is it started with the Orc homeworld already fucked, never really explaining why the Orc homeworld were fucked or how orcs even worked in the beginning. It never gave people the opportunity to care about the orcs. So that's why a lot of people that watched the Warcraft movie sort of almost immediately just accepted that the Alliance are the good guys. And the movie really plays out as such, that the Alliance really is just the good guys. Which we know isn't true. We know that's not actually how World of Warcraft is supposed to be. So I would probably start there. I would start about 20 years before the events of the movie, showcasing Orc culture, Orc clans, the fights, the infighting, the war, the inevitable corruption by the demons and how that took place and how the events that led up to that taking place, and then also showing the Alliance and the problems that the Alliance had, because many people don't remember that the Alliance had incredible problems with the Night Elves before the Night Elves eventually joined. There were massive infighting, there were massive events happening on Azeroth itself long before the events of the Warcraft movie. And I would basically have it play out as almost like, you guys remember Game of Thrones, right? So having that jump around, but then also take a bit of Game of Thrones, take a bit of Witcher. So you're jumping around from like culture to culture and peoples to peoples, but also you're jumping in time. So you can jump, to history and then jump to sort of future events, just to give people an overview of the situation of the events that we call World of Warcraft. The other place that I think would be really cool to start would be Illidan. The childhood of Illidan and Malfurion and Tyrande. The training, his life story, his inevitable turn into what we now know to be Illidan, I think could be really interesting, because a lot of that will include Sargeras, the Burning Legion. We'll see a lot of those storylines, and of course, along with those storylines, I think very cool things would be things like Queen Azshara, her inevitable deals with the old gods. That could be a really cool storyline as well. Or then, my third option would be the story of Arthas, which I also think would be just absolutely incredible. I would love to see an animated short, or not even a short, an animated series of Arthas and his life, because there's again a lot of people that don't know much about that. Nerdy Jessica, how you doing? Thank you very much, I appreciate that. A full-on War of the Ancients series, that could be cool too. Have you seen the FF16 trailer? I don't think so, Kane, but we can absolutely watch that. No. I haven't watched the Legacies animated short yet, Orius. Someone just asked me if I had $100 million and an animation team from the animation team from Arcane, what series would I make? You see, the thing with the Arthas one, the reason I would probably go for the Arthas one if you pushed me, so many people don't know the story of Arthas, and the story of Arthas is so cool, because Arthas struggled so much with trying to figure out the light. The light would not respond to Arthas the same way it would respond to everyone else. For a while, actually for a really long time, Arthas wasn't sure if he was ever going to be able to master the light, which would have been a massive problem because the kingdom of Lordaeron cannot be ruled by a king that isn't of the light. Every king and in the history of Lordaeron have always been either a priest or a paladin. So Arthas had to figure out the light. And it came not just, eventually. It came because of incredibly hard work. Arthas put so much effort and time. And it is that sort of, that feeling of not being good enough and that drive to be the best that would ultimately lead to Arthas's downfall. Arthas's downfall is a Greek tragedy in all but name. Because Arthas's downfall was ultimately, it was his own doing. He undone himself due to who he was. And it wasn't because he wanted to be evil. It was just because he couldn't stand to see his people suffer. And he was willing to go to any lengths to save his people. And that ultimately destroyed his people. Which is just, fuck. That would be such a cool animated show to watch. Pause here. I've been drawing stills for the Warcraft anime. What do you think? It's a Reddit post on Asmon's subreddit. It's proposed anime stills for Warcraft animation. I'm assuming this isn't official, right? This is just fan made. This is really good, actually. It's actually very good. I think you go for the Arthas anime rather than the general Warcraft one. Much easier to focus on a single character rather than big picture stuff. Disco option's so fucking true, though. So true. The World of Warcraft universe is... The World of Warcraft universe isn't quite as big as the Warhammer universe, but it's big enough to the point where you absolutely can't really tell the full World of Warcraft story. Because there's so many stories that are so important to the lore of World of Warcraft, but that actually take place in a bubble. It doesn't really affect the broader World of Warcraft story, but you need to know it in order to know the World of Warcraft story. If you take the Owls, for example, and their inevitable fall to magic, that wasn't something that in the beginning really impacted anything in World of Warcraft. It wasn't until they finally fell to their addictions to magic that they became a problem to the rest of World of Warcraft. So you need to be able to tell that story before you can even show the problems that it caused. So yeah, World of Warcraft absolutely would be better told as just its own collection of stories rather than a single big story trying to tell all of it. People who have suffered enough without becoming prisoners in their own lands, yet prisoners they are, good king. Father still hopes your patience and experience might rub off on me. It is a father's right to dream, isn't it? It's been a while since a prince escorted me anywhere. And what exactly is this scourge meant to cleanse? Why, the living, of course. Glad you made it, Uther. Glad you could make it, Uther. What's your tone with me, boy? There's something about the plague you should know. This entire city must be purged. Your journey has just begun, young prince. We're going to finish right now, Mal'Ganis. Just you and me. Oh, I should have known the blade is cursed. Nothing shall prevent me from having my revenge. You no longer need to bear the weight of my weight of your crown. What are you doing, my son? Succeeding you, father. I dearly hope that there's a special place in hell waiting for you, Arthas. We may never know, Uther. I intend to live forever. Dude, this would be so fucking cool, man. fuck. If someone made an anime series about this, it would be so cool. It's just straight up one of the best anime. Like, this could be Arcane levels of storytelling if someone made an anime of Arthas's life. It's sad that this is the kind of stuff that artists come up with independently of World of Warcraft. Are you telling me that the Blizzard staff can't do stuff like this? It's just impossible for them to do stuff like this? How? How is it impossible? You really think the current staff can't do it? I suppose that's possible. Then Tyrion's life, ending with him killing Arthas. Season 2, I would actually not do it in seasons. Andy, how you doing, bro? Don't have the budget to match anything near Arcane? Dude, there's no way they don't have the budget. It's Activision Blizzard. Like, they have the money. I am not... No one's gonna tell me that Riot Games makes more money than fucking Activision Blizzard. Zanria, I'm gonna be honest. If I want to see one of two studios, and these are the only studios that I will allow anywhere near a World of Warcraft story. The one is the studio that made Arcane, the League of Legends anime. That was so fucking good. The other one is the Edge Runners Arcane anime. That was, oh my god, Edge Runners was so good, dude. I still have 2 episodes to watch, actually. I haven't finished it yet. But I really enjoyed Edge Runners. So I guess I've now watched 2 animes in my entire life. I can no longer say that I don't like anime, because I have at least watched 2. Watch this Giga content? The fuck is that, Andy? What is this? How Arcane writes men. Okay.
Is there a difference between How Arcane Writes Women and How Arcane Writes Men? So that was the question on my mind after making my How Arcane Writes Women video, when I predictably got a ton of requests to do a video on How Arcane Writes Men. I hadn't planned on making that video, and I didn't know what the answer was. I didn't know if there was a difference, but then once I thought about it even a little bit, I was like, of course, there's not only a big difference, there's something pretty profound going on here. So let's compare some things. For women, we get these gender-defying characters. Ambessa, Grace, and Civica are very masculine women. And nearly everything about them, from their appearances to their personalities to their societal roles, are traditionally masculine. And they're not devoid of femininity, but their masculinity is very prominent and very encompassing. We do not...
I do actually, just on this note, want to say it's sort of... It's weird to me how feminism have gone from women can do anything and women should be free to choose their own lives, to women should basically be men. You know, like, whenever you hear modern day feminists speak about anything, it's almost always women should be allowed to sleep with as many men as they want. Women should be allowed not to have children. Women should be this. Women should be able to drink as much as they want. Women should be able to... And you look at it, I'm not saying it's wrong. Like, if a girl wants to sleep with as many people as she wants, she can fucking do that. The problem is most girls don't want to do that. Which I think makes it weird, because you have society telling girls you have to, and then you have girls going, but I don't really want to do that. You know, I don't really want to do all of those things. And we do find this interesting thing that when they test this and they speak to women and they speak to men and they ask men, how would you feel? Would you marry a woman that have slept with X amount of men? The cutoff seems to be 2. The vast majority of men will not marry a woman that have slept with more than 2 men in her life. Whereas for women, there seems to be either no cutoff, or the cutoff is incredibly high. So the cutoff seems to be anywhere from 6 to 10, if at all. So it just doesn't seem like men and women make those decisions on the same level. Now, you could say that's misogyny, but then we have a massive misogynist problem because a lot of men seem to then be misogynists because they just don't want to. There could be biological reasons for this, but I'm not going to go into that. But it is interesting to me that more and more, whenever people, and I made this point with World of Warcraft as well, whenever they write female characters and they want to write these badass female characters, they basically make them men. And that's annoying because you can make female characters that kick ass and are still incredibly comfortable in their femininity. A great example of this is Tomb Raider. Lara Croft is 100% comfortable with her femininity. Lara Croft, even in the games, make mention of she is smaller and weaker than a lot of her opponents, so she has to be smarter. She has to outwit them, and she does because she is incredibly smart and she knows how to think on her feet. And you could write incredible female characters, and they could still be very feminine. They could still be female characters. They don't have to be male characters just looking like female characters. That's not necessary. So I do get what this guy is saying, and it is something that annoys me. Because in World of Warcraft, what they do with female characters that they want to sort of be strong female characters, they make them crazy. Like, every single female character that's supposed to take the lead loses their fucking mind. Sylvanas wants to burn the world down. Jaina wants to kill all the orcs in Orgrimmar. It's like, wait, Tyrande wants to kill everyone, including Sylvanas. It's like, dude, wait. So in other words, whenever a woman gets any sort of power, she goes nuts and wants to destroy the world? How is that the message that you're trying to put out there? Why can't we have a female character that gets a lot of power and isn't a fucking psychopath? Like, why? Are you suggesting that all females with power just become psychopaths, the ones that destroy the world, and then has to apologize for the shit that they had done? Or cool down and calm down and shit? Like, what the fuck is that storyline? Why is that the storyline you go with? Because, in my opinion, those are the fucked up storylines.
Get equivalents for this for the men. As far as personalities and societal roles, we get men who are less masculine in these regards, men who are not fighters, for example, but no men who are overtly feminine in any traditional or even stereotypical way. We do not, for example, get a Sanji, a male cook, a provider who's all about providing sustenance for his crew, for his family, basically. Or in terms of his personality, a romantic, we don't see that in Arcane. We do not get a Ruby Rod who's all about beauty, a celebrity male sex symbol. There's a guy who lives in this dramatic space, he's a performer, he thrives on the love of his fans, he wears roses and lipstick, he seduces people with his beauty and his sexuality.
Must be my sexuality.
And he's not about the action at all. The whole subversion of this character is that he's a man. It's unexpected given all these qualities. And if we're talking image, we get the same difference. For women, we have this wide range. The trio on one end, Mel on the other, characters like Vi in between. For the men, Vander is our super masculine guy. Jace is a little more towards that end. And then everyone else is smack in the middle, in that neutral zone. We don't get any men with a feminine image in our male cast. We get a couple bit characters who fit that, so a bit of a mix, but again, it's not that prominent trio we get with the women. Now, do not mistake what I'm saying here for critique. I'm not saying Arcane needed some feminine man for representation reasons, anything like that. I just want to know what accounts for the difference, since we did see something different with the women. What is going on there? So, like we said before, there is gender...
Sag, bro, there was absolutely no Femboy Friday in Arcane. Sag to all the guys that prefer Femboy Friday. Unlimited power? Exactly. Strong characters never have to put others down to stand high. The thing is, if your character is one of those characters, it absolutely can be done. It depends on the kind of story you want to write. I'm not saying that you can't have absolutely crazy female characters. That's fine, you know? You do get crazy fucking people. There's this story, I literally read about it the other day. I can't remember the lady's name, but it's a woman that married, like, after the Germans invaded France, she literally moved into the hotel where all of the German soldiers were staying, and she ended up marrying one of the Nazi soldiers. This woman became one of the most evil and brutal people, so much so that even the Nazis eventually killed her. The Nazis eventually either killed her or imprisoned her. She would, and I kid you not, She would walk past the concentration camps because her husband was stationed at one of the concentration camps. She would walk past the concentration camp, and then any of the Jews who looked at her, she would tell her husband who looked at her, and then those Jews would be the ones that got killed. She had like body parts of Jews on her desk in jars and shit. This lady was fucking nuts. So I'm not saying that you can't have crazy fucking women, right? You can, absolutely. But it's weird when every single female character is fucking nuts, or when the female characters are nuts but the male characters aren't nuts, or not in the same way. When there's no balance, it doesn't seem like there's variety. It doesn't seem like femininity is ever really celebrated. It feels like in a lot of cases femininity is almost pushed down. The Happy Nexus, I'll have to check for you. I'll have to check for you what the name is. In a minute, I'll go ask my brother after this, because he's the one who told me about this. So then that's why I read about it, because he told me he was watching a thing on it.
Stuff they're doing with the men. And what I noticed was that the masculinity-defying aspects of Arcane weren't just quieter and subtler, they were different in what they were. They were not whole personalities, roles, images, not these character-encompassing things. They were moments, they were behaviors, they were aspects of character image. Jace gets the scene of emotional vulnerability. Silco gets the scene of him applying cosmetics, this aspect of his image. Echo gets a scene where he cries. Victor gets a scene where he cries. Vander gets a damsel in distress scene. These are all moments. Jace's personality isn't being emotionally vulnerable and talking about his feelings and insecurities all the time. He gets this one scene. Silco isn't this pretty princess makeup guru. No, he applies concealer or whatever it is for his facial scar. Echo cries once, Victor cries once, Vander needs to be saved once. So what's all this about? Why moments? Why this difference? So I think this isn't a difference in amount, it's a total difference in what they're addressing by the male characters. It's something very specific, and the way they're addressing it is perfectly suited to what the issue is. So be a man is this thing that boys and men hear throughout their whole lives. Sometimes it's this general life advice thing, but more often it's something said to us in specific moments. Moments when we are not being a man. Men get told us when they cry, when they display emotional vulnerability, when they want to quit something. Moments of weakness, moments of failure, sadness, self-pity. And if you think about what that means, how it plays out, you can have a guy who is masculine in every way under the sun. The guy is a lumberjack, soldier, bodybuilder who clocks in every day and doesn't whine about the physical burdens he bears. He just grows his beard and sweats and farts and drinks beer with the boys and bears it all like a man. And then, if he cries, he's emasculated. It's a little moment, but even little moments like that threaten the person's entire masculinity. In hyper-masculine circles, you just...
Dude, and I realize this is gonna sound weird because the world doesn't think about stuff like this, but if you're a guy and life is good, it's fine, you know? But if you're a guy and things go bad, so stuff really starts fucking unraveling in your world, it is one of the most lonely experiences you can ever go through. Because there isn't the same level of, if you're a guy and you tell your friends, like, you know, I'm going through a hard time, can you guys come over? I need a good cry. Your friends are not going to come over for that, bro. They'll take you out for drinks, but they don't want to sit and listen to you bitch. Every single time I've ever gone through anything, the only advice I've ever gotten was, dude, just get over it. Just move the fuck on. Let's go out. Let's get drunk, man. Just move on. That's sort of the advice that you get. I don't know if that's wrong, because that's usually what I just do. I just move on. I don't know if it's wrong or if it's right, but that is sort of the thing that men do. You know, you just have to move on. Life keeps on going. No one fucking waits for you.
Just don't live those moments down. You become the crybaby, the sissy boy, God forbid the guy who lost to a girl. There's also a standard involving capabilities. Can you throw a football? Can you change a tire? Sexual prowess. Being unable to do one of these things threatens an individual's masculinity as a whole by these traditional standards. So it comes out that being a man isn't a sum total type of phenomenon. It's a standard of purity phenomenon. And purity, I know, is an odd word to use. I don't mean moral purity, I mean like absence of impurity. Like a pure metal or a pure chemical. You are not allowed to cry cry ever. You are not allowed to be weak ever, be vulnerable ever, give up, ask for help, be in certain submissive positions, especially in relation to women. And if you're caught in one of these situations, if you're caught being unable to perform one of the skills on the man's skill set list, that is going on your masculinity permanent record. And you know, it makes you wonder if this is the reason there's no feminine version of the word emasculate. But it could be for this reason. It could be because threatening masculinity with moments like this is a prominent thing with masculinity, and with femininity it either doesn't work the same way or it doesn't exist as prominently. Armchair etymology for sure, but the threat phenomenon is a real thing with masculinity, and I think the theory matches up very well. This is what Arcane is.
Do women actually get... I don't think so. I mean, if a girl... I guess a girl could be called a tomboy, but that's not really what we're talking about here, right? Chris, how you doing, bro? A tomboy is a very specific thing. A tomboy is a girl that is acting a lot more boyish. So a girl that from a young age climbs trees, you know, plays with the boys, plays rough and tumble, that would be a tomboy. Now, emasculate or emasculation is more a thing, you know, it's more, it's almost an insult. And I don't think girls have that. When a girl exhibits some kind of masculine trait in a moment, we don't really even notice that, I think. I don't think as a society we notice that at all. It doesn't matter. Which is actually interesting. Caleb, how you doing, bro? Cool, strong. More like we don't care. I'm not sure if it's about caring. Because to not care would mean that we notice, we just don't mind. It's more a case of it doesn't even get noticed. So when a girl does have a masculine moment in what would otherwise be concerned or considered a feminine woman, it's not something that anyone gives a shit about, right? I don't know, because again, dykes would be a different thing, no? Boy's interest is seen as cute. A boy with girly interest is seen as weird. Modwell, although these days, considering the amount of guys that I've met that sort of don't mind that, I think that is changing, but you are correct. I think traditionally, you are correct.
Addressing. With women, the focus was expanding the idea of women's roles and images and personalities because that's a core subject about women that society is grappling with right now. With men, I do see some people talking about expanding roles and image in that same way, but what I see a lot more of is discussion about this be a man standard.
That could actually be true, Blade Smasher. Yeah, that could actually be true. When a woman is... Although we would call a woman bossy when she's exhibiting very specific masculine traits. So it has to be very specific ones, whereas a male can exhibit any feminine traits that a male would exhibit would emasculate him, right? It would immediately lead to mockery and whatnot. But you are correct. There are certain things that if a woman does these things, we would call her bossy, we would call her butch, you know, any number of another derivatives thereof. So you are correct in that sense. Yeah, I didn't think of that. Good point.
This purity test aspect of masculinity, how easily threatened it is, how to shape it into something more durable. And that's what Arcane chose to make central to how it wrote its male characters. It showed those characters going through moments like that, unmasculine moments, moments when they engage in behavior.
Oh, yeah. Apocalypse, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about moments thereof. So a girl that is completely feminine but has a moment of masculinity. So in a moment, she exhibits something masculine. We wouldn't then call her a dyke. I don't think. I don't even know what... I thought dyke meant lesbian. Am I wrong? Is that not what dyke means? Isn't dyke a slur word, actually? Intrigued by the contrast of two women in the film Alien, one being the classic damsel in distress and the other being a badass. I'm trying to remember what... It's been so long since I've watched Alien, though. Yeah, I don't know. I quite honestly, Afrikaans doesn't have a word similar to dyke, so I don't know. But I'm pretty sure it is used as a slur in most instances.
that would threaten traditional masculinity, moments when they're in emasculating situations, and then we see them all come out on the other side with their masculinity fully intact, functioning at 100%. Jace has this vulnerable moment currently up in Mel's lap talking about his feelings, and then after that he has by far his most masculine scenes. Victor has a number of emotionally vulnerable moments, this one being the most hysterical, so to speak, and then he sucks it up and he takes responsibility. Vander has this embarrassing moment with Savika, and then he's a damsel in distress, and then after that he has his big macho muscle powerhouse moment. Echo has his moment of vulnerability, followed by his boy savior moment. Heimerdinger, the pattern doesn't fit exactly, but he still gets a pretty emasculating moment. He's walking alone in a scary neighborhood, and he is freaked out. Women are usually the ones having that experience, not exclusively, of course. I've lived in terrible neighborhoods, and I've experienced this many times, and it is emasculating. But here we see Heimerdinger do this, and he's still Heimerdinger after all is said and done. He comes out of it fully capable. So enough of the characters follow this trend, and this emasculation mechanism is a real phenomenon about masculinity. I think it's fair to say that this is what they were addressing. Very different from what they're doing with the women. And I think it's because women have different gender-related issues and struggles, and because femininity works differently. It makes sense. You have different genders, you have different tools, different methods to express those differences. And I want to take a moment here to address a sentiment I think people need to be careful about. I saw about 200 of these comments on my women video. Arcane writes women as people. Why is writing women regarded as so different from writing men? Just write the characters, damn it. How to write a good woman? Write a good character without thinking about their gender, and then say that they're women. Bam, women are people. How to write good women? Write them like any other character. So this is an approach you could take. Arcane did not do this. The whole point of my video was that the writers put a lot of work in.
I want to be clear, though, while I agree in principle, I do not agree in specific instances, because if you're trying to write a good character in a very specific scene where the character is playing a role within that scene, but the scene is dictating all of the actions of the characters, then absolutely yes, write a great character and then make it male or female. It doesn't really matter because you've written a very good character. More often than not, though, works of literature do not work that way, because the character will also inform how things play out. So, for example, if you have a man in a specific situation and you have a woman in an identical situation, their experiences as either a man or a woman will play a part in how the problem is solved. So let's say, for example, there is a rock in the road. The rock is heavy enough that the woman cannot lift it, but not so heavy that the man cannot lift it with great strain. The character that is a man will then strain themselves, lift the rock, most likely hurt something if you're trying to make that one of your plot points, but that will be the way the man deals with that problem. The woman, because the rock is too heavy for her, because she is a woman, will find another way. She'll find either another way to go about it, otherwise, or, finding literally just a different path, or she will find a clever way of getting over or under or around the rock that is in her way. And that is a moment where the gender of the character changed the outcome of the story, and you have to keep that in mind. More often than not, that is how it works. So you can't really write just a great character and then make it male or female, because you're going to lose a lot of the personality that those characters are supposed to bring to their stories. We don't watch stories simply for the greater narrative. We also watch stories for the individual narratives, for the individual experiences of the characters that live within those stories. A great example of this is the Dark Imperium that I'm reading currently, where you have this great thing that's taking place on this planet where the armies of Nurgle is constantly spreading disease and rot and attacking the Imperial Guard. But then you also have, on top of that, a way of seeing this through the eyes of an Imperial Guardsman. And very much the Imperial Guardsman interprets this world in their own way. And that would be different from person to person. No two people are going to experience this world and this fight against Nurgle the same way, because no two people will be the same. And they make reference of this. Varys is in terms of what Imperial Guardsman would be considered, is a seasoned soldier. Varys have been fighting for a really long time, and he's been alive longer than what most Imperial Guardsmen ever are. Whereas the rookies, the new ones on the battlefield, are oftentimes so scared that they even forget to pull the trigger. So for them, the world is going to be much more faster, everything's going to happen, and it's going to feel chaotic. So it's very important to remember that stories are told both from a macro level, but also from an individual level, and that's where the sort of just write a great character forehead sort of falls apart.
To their female characters specifically. There were a lot of rules they put in place and diligently followed. They built their world with a culture that supported a specific vision for gender. The way other characters were written was modified to support certain themes of gender. Right women as people, nothing wrong with that idea. It's great as a slogan, but as writing advice, it comes off as simplification of a topic that deserves a lot of attention. And that's not because of the women part. This video you're watching now is all about how writing men is also a topic that deserves a lot of attention. And there are men-specific problems to address and men-specific tools to use to address them. And that's true for any category. If I'm writing a child character or an old person, hearing write old people as people won't give me much guidance. What I think the sentiment of these comments is trying to say is don't make gender the focus of character. Ground everything in realness. That's all fine. That's great. The readings of this phrase that concern me are gender isn't an important quality to factor into how you write a character. That's not good advice. Stop overcomplicating the topic of writing women. Not helpful advice. The methods for writing better female characters are applications of the same rules for writing any good character. Not true advice. For any category, male, female, old, young, poor, rich, human, alien, I would say the same thing. Learn about the qualities of your characters, learn problems you can address with your characterization, learn specific methods to showcase those qualities effectively.
A fucking brilliant example of this would be Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings, Tolkien spends so much time highlighting the culture of the characters that he writes. And even though the only hobbit that is really important in the Tolkien book, it's only one hobbit that really plays a massive part. 2 if you include Gollum, 3 if you include 3, 4, 5 actually if you include the friends around Frodo, right? But even just 5 is still a very small number. Why does he go into so much detail about hobbits and their culture? See, because culture informs how you're going to write Frodo. If you don't know how hobbits will react to certain things and what hobbits like and dislike and all the rest of it, how are you going to write a good hobbit? You're not. You're going to end up writing a hobbit the same way you would write a human, and that's not how that works. Hobbits and humans are not the same. Hobbits are small. Hobbits don't really care about the outside world. The Shire is all that matters to them. They're in love with food, they're in love with family, they're in love with friends, they don't like things that are hard, they stay away from danger, but they're hardy folk. They're hardy. They can survive very much if they're pushed to do so. This is why dwarfs get an incredible amount of character development or societal development, because again, you have to be able to write the dwarf as a dwarf. You can't write the dwarf as a hobbit or a human. It would not work. So, yeah, you can't just write a character because not all characters are the same. Every character will have their own story. So, yeah, a lot of people, human beings like to oversimplify things, but oversimplification is not often helpful.
These are all tools you can use to improve your craft. And these rules and methods and techniques can be complicated. They can be counterintuitive. They can be very different from how writing other types of characters works. And a guiding mantra that makes any of it sound kind of self-evident should be relegated to just that, a guiding mantra. A little reminder to steer you back on track sometimes, but not actual writing advice. With the comments on my video, I could tell a lot of them were just using it as I'm suggesting, as a slogan, as a mantra, but some of them weren't, so I wanted to give my 2 cents there. Okay, onward. So emasculating moments, this is where I was at a bit with my understanding, but then I was digging a bit deeper and I noticed that this is part of a much broader theme that encompasses a lot more. So another difference between how Arcane does men and women is stereotypes. Arcane took a lot of care in avoiding negative stereotypes with women. Some it avoided entirely, like hysteria and fragility. Some it subverted or neutralized, like Manic Pixie Dream Girl, Damsel in Distress, Heart of the Story. Some it just painted in a negative light, like submissiveness, dependence on men. And with men, there are also certain stereotypes that were avoided entirely. Aggressive sexual behavior, certain types of measuring contests. We didn't see any of that, but otherwise, no, they didn't avoid stereotypes much at all with men. Arcane's men embody very stereotypically male flaws, and I want to talk about 5 of these. Jace has a gigantic ego that causes him to blunt force his way through every problem. Heimerdinger is hyper-logical. He views everything like a mathematical equation, like a science experiment, so much so that he can't see the humanity struggling right under his nose, or over his nose in his case, because he's a Yordle and is therefore small. Victor is subtler, a bit more speculative. I think Victor's flaw is that he suppresses his emotions. His whole life is about sucking it up. You're from the Undercity? Suck it up, find a way to get into the academy. You're stuck in an assistant role? Suck it up and find a way to have a big breakthrough. You have no friends? Suck it up. You're sick? Suck it up. Gonna die? Suck it up. His outer persona is cool as a cucumber, nose to the grindstone, do what you gotta do. It's all very be a man, but if you keep sucking it up, if you ignore all these emotions that want to be felt about his sickness, his death, his legacy, those emotions don't just go away. They'll bubble up eventually and they'll come back at the worst time. Why does he see that he's out of Shimmer and then just use the Hex Core anyway? He knows how it works. He knows the Hex Core kills if he doesn't use Shimmer. It's not like he couldn't procure more, if not immediately, at least at some point from Singed. So why not just wait? It's because he's desperate. We're seeing his emotional dam break right here. This is everything. He's pent up, hitting him like a storm. He's anxious, he's desperate, he's hopeful, he's afraid. And in that storm of anxiety and hope, he makes a stupid mistake. As one does when very personal emotions overcome you during a very technical process. So Victor, we have suppresses emotions, a very stereotypical male problem. Vander is a character whose main struggle we're seeing the end of. Seems like he was this very violent person that led to his downfall, and that's unfortunately also a stereotypical male behavior, violence. Marcus is similar. Rage seems like one of his core struggles. Now, very often when stories address themselves to stereotypically male flaws like the ones I listed, we get a blanket condemnation. Male ego needs to be tempered. Male rage and violence needs to be neutered. Sucking it up is a bad thing. Hyperlogical men need to abandon that way of seeing the world. Or, other times, it's completely embraced. Be violent, get mad, suck it up, etc. Typical Arcane, we see an incredibly balanced portrayal, a balanced judgment of these characteristics. In Arcane, when a man develops and succeeds, he doesn't develop out of that stereotypically male flaw, he develops with it intact. Jace never stops being egotistical, he just changes how he's egotistical.
With respect, I don't give a shit what any of you think of me anymore.
And his triumphant solution at the end of his arc is just as hasty and brute-forced and boneheaded as everything he's done.
He paid in gold and didn't even haggle.
The boy didn't even haggle.
Victor never stops sucking it up. He does some wallowing after Sky's death. He wallows in sadness, wallows in self-pity, wallows in existential pity, but then he sucks it up and goes right back to action. Cool, stone-faced as ever. We see none of what he just went through in this scene. Heimerdinger's hyperlogical approach prevented him from connecting with people, but the way he solved that problem, very scientific. He saw he was wrong about something, and then he went off to gather more data. This is exactly what a scientist should do. He stays hyperlogical Heimerdinger, and he succeeds with his logic. Vander does stop being violent, and then he realizes that that isn't the right approach, so he engages his flaw. He takes up arms again, he uses violence. This time striking the exact balance he needs to and not a bit more. And then Marcus is the inverse. Old Marcus would have blown himself and Silco to hell in a fiery self-righteous rage. But because he's no longer as rash as he used to be, he never achieves this triumphant moment that was waiting for him. Arcane openly does associate male stereotypes with its men. It doesn't shy away from that. It does not condemn those qualities as problematic. It also does not revere them as ideal. It shows these qualities being expressed without belittling them. It doesn't show its male characters discarding male stereotypes and
I don't know what his conclusions are going to be or what else he's going to highlight, but one of the things I like about this is what great storytelling is all about. It's about highlighting things in culture. We spoke about this yesterday, about why so many of the great playwrights in history were almost philosophers. You highlight the things that are there, you highlight the things that you see in society, but you don't make the choice. Remember, you're just a medium for highlighting things. You're not there to teach people anything. You're only there to highlight what is already there. To basically put it under a magnifying glass. It is then up to society, or in this case the viewer, to make their decision. If the viewer doesn't like the fact that these male flaws exist within these characters, the viewer can then decide not to like these male characters because of these stereotypes, because of these flaws. Whereas more often than not nowadays in Hollywood, they will, you can be sure, highlight the problems of males and some of the male sort of shortcomings within society, but then they will also tell you how to think about those things. They will reprimand who needs reprimanding. They will punish those who need to be punished until that person exhibits what we would consider to be an acceptable level of reprogramming, if that makes sense. Yeah, prescriptive versus descriptive. Very good way of putting it, MMO.
Favor of feminine stereotypes, and this is all very similar to what we talked about with women and emotions. Arcane does not belittle emotions by portraying them as weak and hysterical, but it lets its female characters have these moments. With men, though, it goes further. It's not just about letting these moments happen without judgment. Instead, it fully explores the benefits and detriments of these qualities. It gives fair and nuanced judgment to them, all in the context of validating them. Very balanced and very accurate as well, I think. Sometimes it's good to be a stubborn, egotistical idealist. Sometimes you achieve a lot by sucking it up. Sometimes violence is the answer. And if you think you're starting to see an overarching theme here, yeah, this is about when I started to see it as well. Arcane's overall theme when it comes to masculinity is validation. It's showing all of these emasculating moments are okay. It's okay to have moments like this. Those moments don't mean you're not a man. They don't disconnect you from your masculinity or prevent you from doing what you need to do. And it shows a variety of typically masculine ways of relating to the world. It shows the limits of those qualities, but then it also shows that there's nothing wrong or invalid about the qualities themselves. You can fail with them, pick yourself back up, and then use those same qualities successfully. But this validation theme goes further. In-story validation is also the theme. Arcane's men seek validation from each other, from the people around them, from society. Victor seeks validation from humanity in the form of a legacy. All of Jace's conflicts with people are from them not validating him. Not validating his science, not validating the direction he wants to take his science, not validating his political decisions, and his final triumph is rejecting validation from anyone but himself. But it's in men's relationships that we see this theme explored most fully. Brotherhood in Arcane is about finding mutual empowerment through validation. Jace and Victor's mutual validation, their belief in each other despite what society will do to them if they fail, that's what gives them the fortitude to develop Hextech. He's hurt by his mother not validating him. He's hurt by Caitlyn's family not validating him. Victor sees his vision and judges it worthy. Having that one voice of validation, that's what's important to Jace. And we see it from the other side too. Victor depends a lot on Jace's validation.
Jace will understand.
Silco.
It was very... I didn't even think of it at the time. I just enjoyed the show. But now that he's going through these things, it was realistic. You know, it was very realistic. It didn't... It like we said before, it didn't preach to anyone. It just made it really fucking... It covered it as you would expect it to happen if this was real life. You know, this is how real life would be as well. Deja vu about the conversation we had a whole back about validation. Validation, by the way, is something, Apocalypse, that men want all the time. I think it's actually one of the most... Actually, I don't even think it's just men. I think it's humans. Humans want validation, but for men specifically, there's nothing more masculine than being validated. That knowing that you're valid, knowing that your contributions are appreciated. If you want to destroy a man, invalidate the things that he does. Don't notice him. Don't notice he's changed. Don't notice him trying. Things like that will absolutely fucking ruin a man. The conversation we had in War Room about it like a month ago. The level of fundamental similarity to what I said is trippy. Don't spill the secret. Guthard, I mean, I don't think it's news to anyone. It shouldn't be. If it's news to you, you're not paying attention. But anyways.
and Vander were brothers in arms, they shared the same vision, and this scene shows that even after Vander betrayed him, Silco still needs Vander's validation for his plans, and later on in Act 3 he still seeks Vander's validation when it comes to fatherhood and Jace's deal. And then you have fatherhood. Fatherhood in Arcane is all about cultivating power in your child, but validation always plays a central role in that. With Silco, you have him teaching and guiding Jinx, removing impediments to power, and then telling her what she needs to hear to empower her, a statement of validation.
You're perfect.
With Vander, you have him teaching Vi and guiding her how to use her power, but also encouraging her by validating her.
That's my girl.
Victor is a character very much in search of a father figure, if not an actual father per se. First, we see Singe validating him.
Why aren't you playing with the others? Loneliness is often the byproduct of a gifted mind.
And he takes on that kind of role for Victor. But then Victor can't accept that validation in part because he can't reciprocate it. Heimerdinger is next, but his fatherhood doesn't provide adequate empowerment.
Do you think it was my life's ambition to be an assistant?
But that is his relationship, and we see validation again playing a central role later on.
You should be proud of what you've accomplished, Victor.
And this is a bit character, but even Caitlyn's dad shows signs of playing this part.
She was doing what she thought was right.
In contrast, motherhood in Arcane is about protection at any cost. We see Mrs. Kierman with her extreme and violent reaction when she thinks Kate is in danger, and Bessa's whole career is about this if we take her at her word.
I couldn't endure the look in your eyes whenever I made the necessary decisions to keep us safe.
You have Jace's mom, who as Jace sees it kind of ruined his life, or wanted to ruin his life in order to protect him. And then you have the really interesting case, you have Vi. So Vi and everything else that she is a mix of masculine and feminine, and she is as well with parenthood. She's a mixture of a father and a mother to Powder. She is very clearly about cultivating power in Powder, encouraging her to be more physically capable.
Powder, look at me. What did I tell you?
That I'm ready.
That's right.
Encouraging her in her personal strengths.
What makes you different makes you strong.
And her goals for both Powder and herself reflect this empowerment theme.
You're stronger than you think. And one day, this city's gonna respect us.
And then obviously Vi is also Powder's protector, even in ways Powder doesn't always agree with or appreciate. After the time skip, we see Vi come out of prison with a very motherly role. She wants to protect Powder from Soko. But then her conflict evolves. And then her final dilemma is all about validating her sister or failing to validate her. Imagine if Vi had said you're perfect. But no, Jinx's other father got there first and he did his father's duty, and Jinx as his daughter did hers. Okay, so what's the upshot of all this? Why validation? Why is that such a pervasive theme here? So speculative, but my theory is that validation is the masculine form of professing love. It's this less emotive form of confirming that same bond. And if you think about it, it's like the stereotype of what men want to hear from their fathers isn't "I love you," it's "I'm proud of you," it's validation. The classic, proverbial bond between men is the army buddy, who can wordlessly share a beer with you, and for your relationship, that's a meaningful moment, despite zero expression of emotions. All of these typically male bonding moments are these reciprocation situations where no emotion is actually expressed, maybe even nothing is expressed between the two people. There's just this togetherness that implies I enjoy spending time with you, playing catch, going fishing, smoking a cigar together. This scene at the end with Jinx is the perfect scene for Soko to say I love you, but he doesn't. He says the male version of I love you. He validates her. Side note, this is also my theory for why Han and Leia's I love you, I know moment works, because I love you too doesn't fit Han's masculinity, but I know does. Why? Because it's validation. So Arcane showing these validation moments between characters is really exploring male love in a unique and very effective way, and exploring the themes of self-validation and also the story itself conferring validation on all these qualities that men might have. It's a very subtly meaningful way of connecting to its male audience. Very insightful, but so subtle that I would never realize this if I wasn't thinking into it this deeply. I feel it, and I did feel it, but I wouldn't be able to name it. So that's really my overarching theory here. Validation, I think it's what Arcane was trying to explore overall with
Dude, it is actually, the writers of Arcane were very aware that a huge portion of its audience would be male. Not to say that there aren't females, and of course, there's enough in that for girls to also enjoy. But yeah, I'll be honest with you. Whenever I watch a movie and there's a massive outpouring of emotion from the lead male character, it makes me uncomfortable. Validation, none of the scenes he just described there in Arcane had any effect on me other than I really enjoyed them. Whereas if you have these giant vulnerable moments, where the guy is pouring his heart out and, making himself feel very vulnerable, it makes me feel very awkward, usually.
So much of how it wrote all of these male characters. Okay, now some other very vital things. In the women's video, I talked about the big picture stuff, all the environmental things they did, like Amanda's quote about lack of stigma when it comes to sexuality and gender. There's one major thing they did that facilitated how they wanted to write men, but there's an interesting question with it. So the thing they did was choosing a culture within League's world that was already geared towards a relatively muted expression of masculinity. Piltover especially is a world that doesn't have a place for a Conan the Barbarian, for example. And Zon 2, both of these cultures value science science and smarts. And in Zahn, there is more of a place for dumb macho muscle, but either way, for both Zahn and Piltover, you'll have pure aggression sublimated into these neutral qualities: ambition, willingness to take risks, a high value on intelligence and smarts and engineering abilities, and that'll make these places fertile ground for men who are less macho in terms of image, still functioning at a high level in society. A Victor or Heimerdinger doesn't need some special reason why he's able to keep up. There's just no expectation of physical capabilities. You know, in Zahn you have characters like Echo. Echo is weak, but he makes up for it in this very Zahn Piltover way. Smarts and tech, it's how the whole world functions, it fits. And this is part of the larger topic of integration, which Arcane is always stellar at. That they didn't try to have a cast of Victors and Heimerdingers and Echoes and Singed in a place like Noxus, for example. They chose a place within their world where it would fit organically, where we would see this type of muted expression masculinity be the norm. And this integration...
Yeah, just to be fair, in Noxus, Arcane would not work. If Noxus took place in if Arcane took place in Noxus, none of this shit works, because Noxus is all about masculinity, hyper masculinity. Look at the characters that we get from Noxus; they're like super masculine. So yeah, that's actually, dude, these guys were fucking genius. Do you think they thought about these things, or do you think it's just that's just how they think about the world, so it just came very natural to them whilst writing it?
Phenomenon, of course, they're meticulous about on a micro level as well. Things like Silco's use of makeup, it's because he cares about his image, he doesn't want to appear weak, because physically he is pretty weak. And we see that throughout his whole character, he hides every sign of weakness. He's very obsessed with using presentation and image to manipulate people. You know, with Jace, you have the sheltered rich kid, of course he's going to be a bit soft sometimes. Scenes of the characters crying, all organic, failing, being embarrassed, all organic, all integrated. We don't have anything that's just there because here's what I think about gender, look at me. So Piltover Zahn, great choice if this is what they wanted to say about masculinity. Now my understanding is that most of League's world doesn't really fit this, so that makes me really curious to see what happens when we get to a place like Noxus, for example. That's kind of the big question here for me, that they're going to have a completely different way of exploring this in future seasons. And they already hinted at their approach here with a character like Kino, Mel's brother. He fits right into that society as the Fox, but there's a ton they'll be able to explore with like a full cast of fighter characters, and I'm so anxious to see what happens once we get to those parts of Runeterra. Obviously it's going to be good because it's Arcane, but yeah, I'm just so curious what they're going to do. Okay, now if you haven't seen my video about women, a lot of those things apply equally to the men, especially neutralization, which is showing typically gendered things happening with both genders to strip away the focus on gender so we can just care about the characters. I explore that in a lot of detail in the other video, so go watch that if you haven't. Also exploring men's relationships, not empowering men at the expense of women, and we talked a little bit about integration, character first design just now, so check that out if you want. All that applies very much to men as well. And let me know what you think about this topic, everyone, men and women. As a guy who made a whole thing about how women are treated in the show, I heartily invite women to do the same, share any and all opinions on the portrayal of men in Arcane, and portrayal of men in general, and men of course on a personal level. How do you feel about this topic and what Arcane did? I'd love to hear your thoughts. So like I said, I literally wasn't planning on making this video. I didn't think there was that much there. Even once I started having some thoughts, I didn't think it would be long enough for a full video, but I was totally wrong. There's absolutely a ton to talk about here. And I find it absolutely fascinating to uncover this stuff that I really think isn't supposed to be the focus at all. Things that are supposed to be in the background. That's some of my favorite stuff to bring to light. And despite this video and the other one, gender isn't really a topic I think about that much. I expected to learn a lot from the women video, and I did. I did not expect to learn so much from writing this video. I had never recognized how the be a man thing functioned. Now with this level of nuance, it's something Arcane literally taught me about my own gender through their presentation. Very cool experience for me. So the 50k Q&A video will go up next Sunday. Got a ton of great questions, very excited about that. Following Sunday will be another long video, 4 more shorts between now and then, so stay tuned for that. Support the Patreon, big thanks to everyone there, especially Evan Sanchez and Cat in a Beanbag. Thanks so much, appreciate the support as always. So thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you next time.
This was a really cool video. Thank you very much for suggesting it, Andy. I appreciate that. The good writers first and foremost. The bad stuff usually comes from writers just trying to push their vision rather than tell a story. I think it also comes from limitations, you know. If you only have this many characters, you have to make them make sense in every single scenario. And they can't always make sense in every single scenario. So, yeah, I would say another world that does this really well would be Warhammer 40k, at least from the things that I've discovered from it so far. It seems to understand how certain things work and how certain things are supposed to work, and how these So how the crossover functions within society and how men and women react to things differently. And then, of course, there are so many examples of things that just get it completely fucking wrong. Metal fan from Al, how you doing, brother? Sorry for having spammed this message a few times already, but I really want to know Akalon's opinion about the last part of it. I can't wait until the last book of the Siege of Terra series gets released, as it will contain the details of the final battle of the Heresy. I'm interested from the viewpoint of a theory that it wasn't Horus who mortally wounded the Emperor, but that it was the Black Rage-induced Sanguinius. So I've heard people say that that is what happened. I'm not entirely sure, considering don't all of Sanguinius's children, don't they see his death? I'm pretty sure that's what makes them rage, right? Is they see his death over and over again. So that means they would probably have been able to see if he was the one who killed the Emperor, no? MMO, I would say... Oh, yeah, sure. I would say yes. There are moments... I can't exactly think of which. I'd have to go through a lot of World of Warcraft stuff in order to find that. But there's definitely been moments in World of Warcraft where things happen and you're not entirely sold on the things that's happening and how it's happening. Actually, I can think of a good example of where the way things took place just felt completely wrong. The final moments of Arthas' life before he got turned into nothing. So you have this scene where Sylvanas, Jaina, and Uther stands in front of Arthas, the globe that is Arthas' soul. And it is Sylvanas that ultimately takes the lead and gives this entire monologue about how his legacy is over. And for all of the audience, this is an incredibly disingenuous moment, considering who it's coming from. It's coming from someone who has, at the moment at least, the exact same legacy. And the two people that is standing with her, Uther and Jaina, would probably have a lot more to say that would be a hell of a lot more impactful. Instead, in that moment, Jaina is entirely quiet, doesn't say a word to what used to be the love of her life. It would have been much more impactful if it was Jaina that said goodbye to Arthas, or even Uther. And it would have been more impactful in that moment for that to have been a kind word, not an angry word. Because at the end of the day, that line there is a line of go fuck yourself, Arthas. That's one of the reasons I made the video about Arthas months ago when this happened. Arthas' story is a story of tragedy. It's not... There's nothing to hate Arthas about. Arthas fell because he was trying to keep his people safe, and after he fell, he was mind-controlled by Zuvul to do incredibly horrible things. And if you listen to Arthas' words right at his death, he asks his father whether or not it's over. In other words, Arthas was forced to endure so much suffering at the hands of Zuvul, and in his time of being the Lich King. The final moments of that cinematic would have been far more impactful if it was kind. If it was Jaina saying goodbye to the love of her life, telling him that it is finally time for him to rest, and that he will no longer be used by others to commit atrocities upon the weak, the innocent, and the frail. Considering that's why Arthas turned, was because he was trying to stop atrocities against the weak, the innocent, and the frail. So it's sort of... It is a moment that doesn't make sense. It's a moment that should have been completely different. It should have been handled completely different. It's one of the... I lost my mind in that scene. I was so fucking angry watching that scene. Sylvanas for genocide, but Arthas can go get wrecked, apparently. Yeah, Arthas sounds like a better Darth Vader. Arthas' story was incredible. Or not really by his actions. Because by the time Arthas becomes a villain, he is already very much under the control of Zuval. Just because he didn't have the helm yet, doesn't mean he wasn't already being controlled. Frostmourne was already eating his soul at that point, or probably have already ate most of it. So Arthas, the ability for Arthas to tell good from evil would at that point have been severely diminished. The evil actions of Arthas, the only evil actions we can point to that was 100% Arthas, would probably be his final moment before picking up Frostmourne. So the time in Northrend, the burning of the boats, the slaughtering of the mercenaries, the lying to his men. One could view those as evil, but again, it's evil in search of justice. He doesn't want to leave Northrend because he wants the person responsible for the